He was just 14, a bright, curious teenager with dreams of becoming an engineer. One evening, he told his mother he was heading to a friend's house. The next time she saw him, he was lying cold on a mortuary table. What if I told you the killer wasn't a stranger in the shadows? What if I told you he was someone Breck had known for months through gaming? Someone who had earned his trust, slowly, quietly, completely. This isn't just a story about a murder. It's a story about how a predator found his way into a teenager's life without ever stepping foot inside his home. And how the internet, a place that brings us all together, became the perfect hunting ground for a killer. Let's start from the beginning. And I want you to come with me piece by piece as we uncover the warning signs that were missed and how it all led to a tragedy that should have never happened. Breck Bednar was born in 2000. He grew up in Caterham, Surrey, a peaceful town just outside London, a quiet place where crime wasn't something parents thought about every day. Breck was smart, really smart. He loved science, especially computers and engineering. While other kids were outside kicking footballs, Breck was inside building things, exploring the digital world, and getting lost in coding forums and online games. Like so many teens, he loved gaming. It wasn't just a hobby, it was his way to connect. A virtual world where he made friends, chatted for hours, and felt understood. That's where he first met Daynes. But at the time, no one saw any danger. Here's where I need you to pause and think. When a child is talking to someone online every single day, how do you know if it's just friendship or something darker? Let's keep going. It started harmlessly as it always does. Breck had joined a private online server with a group of other teenage boys. They talked about games, coding, tech, pretty normal stuff. But one voice in the group stood out. A 19-year-old named Daynes. Lewis was quiet, confident, and always in control. He called himself a programmer, claimed he had his own tech company, told the boys he could teach them things no one else could. And Breck listened. Daynes made Breck feel special. He told him he was smarter than the other kids, that he was wasting his time with school and teachers who didn't understand him. Sound familiar? This is where online grooming begins, not with threats, not with violence, but with trust. Have you ever noticed how predators don't just target victims, they isolate them first? By the end of 2013, Lewis had become a daily part of Breck's life. And that's when things started to shift. Breck's mom, Lauren Lafave, started to feel something was off. She noticed her son pulling away. Less time with family, less interest in school. More time locked in his room, headset on, talking to friends she didn't know. And one voice, Daynes, seemed to dominate the conversations. Lauren wasn't passive. She did what any good parent would do. She researched. She looked into Daynes, and what she found didn't sit right. He wasn't running a company. He wasn't in school. He was a recluse, living alone in a flat rarely seen by neighbors. She confronted Breck. She told him she didn't trust Lewis, and she even contacted the police. But here's where the system failed, because no action was taken. What would you do if your child believed their online friend more than they believed you? How far would you go to protect them when they didn't think they were in danger? Next, we'll talk about what happened in the weeks before Breck left home, and why the signs were flashing red but still ignored. It was early 2014. Lauren was becoming more and more alarmed. Breck's behavior had changed, not in a teenage mood swing way, but something deeper. He was anxious, distant, secretive. And above all, he was loyal to Daynes. Lauren wasn't just worried, she was scared. She tried everything. She blocked Lewis on Breck's devices. She reached out to the school. She even called the police and explained that she believed her son was being groomed online. The words she used were clear. She said, "This man is controlling my son. He is dangerous. Please help." But the response was lukewarm. Because Breck hadn't been physically harmed and there was no clear crime, the case didn't move forward. And that's where this tragedy should have stopped. The system had a chance to intervene, but it didn't. Have you ever felt like you were screaming into a void and no one was listening? That's where Lauren was. Watching her son slip further away and being told there was nothing more she could do. On February 16th, 2014, Breck told his mother something strange. He said he was going to spend the night at a friend's house. It wasn't unusual for a boy his age, but Lauren's gut screamed no. She questioned him. Who's the friend? Where does he live? And Breck, who had become an expert at avoiding confrontation, gave vague answers. He insisted it was fine, that she could trust him. Lauren was torn. She didn't want to push him further away. She had tried so hard to protect him, but Breck was determined, and eventually she let him go. That was the last time she saw her son alive. What would you have done in that moment? Do you let them go or lock the door and fight? That night, Breck left home with a small overnight bag. He was headed to a flat in Grays, Essex, the home of Daynes. The next morning, police received a chilling call. A calm, male voice on the other end said, I need police and a forensic team to my address, please." It was Daynes. The call lasted over 10 minutes. During it, Lewis claimed he had been attacked. He said Breck had come at him with a knife, and in self-defense, Lewis said he restrained him. When officers arrived, they found Breck. He was lying on the bedroom floor. His throat had been slashed, 12 wounds, all to the neck. He was already gone. The scene was disturbing and staged. Breck was laid out in a particular way. His clothes had been removed and placed beside him. Duct tape and restraints were found in the room. This wasn't a fight. It wasn't an accident. It was a murder planned, deliberate, and chillingly precise. Why did Daynes do it? What was his end goal? Control, power, or something worse? In the next sections, we'll go deeper into the investigation, Lewis's past, and what police uncovered on his computers that sent shivers down their spines. After the crime scene was secured, detectives began carefully collecting evidence. Everything about the room told them this wasn't spontaneous. The duct tape, the restraints, the careful positioning of Breck's body, the lack of defensive wounds on Lewis, and the severity of injuries on Breck all pointed to one thing: this was planned. But the most important piece of the puzzle, Lewis's computer. When investigators dug into the hard drives, what they found made everything worse. There were chat logs, hundreds of messages spanning months showing Lewis manipulating Breck, telling him not to trust his parents, that society was broken, that only Lewis understood him. This wasn't random violence. This was calculated, groomed, executed. And then came the most disturbing part. There were images and files suggesting Lewis had not just fantasized about murder. He had researched it, how to restrain someone, how to clean up a scene, even forums where he discussed domination and control fantasies. This wasn't just a predator. This was a person who studied how to kill. So who was Daynes? At first glance, he was a loner. 19 years old, lived alone, dropped out of school, claimed to run a tech company, but there was no trace of it. His neighbors barely saw him. And when they did, he was polite, quiet, kept to himself. But behind the screen, Lewis was something else. He had a long online history of trying to control younger boys. He would use praise, then isolation. He'd tell them they were special, that no one else understood them. Then he'd turn them against their families, bit by bit, until they depended on him completely. In Breck's case, it worked. Police discovered that Lewis had tried this before. Breck wasn't the first boy he had targeted, but he was the first whose story ended in murder. And here's the question that keeps me up at night. If Lewis hadn't been caught, how many others would have followed? Louis Daynes was arrested immediately and charged with murder. But even in custody, he barely spoke. He showed no remorse, no emotion. And then, to everyone's surprise, he pled guilty. Just like that. No long trial, no defense, no explanation. He was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum of 25 years before parole. But that left Breck's family and all of us with a hole where the why should be. There was no motive given, no confession, no apology, just silence. Why did he do it? Was it about power? Was it a twisted fantasy come to life? Was Breck just in the wrong place at the wrong time? Those answers may never come. But one thing is certain. This case wasn't just about one boy and one killer. It was about the online world and how dangerous it can become when no one is watching. In the next sections, we'll talk about the fallout, how Breck's mother turned her grief into action, and what parents need to understand about digital predators. After the sentencing, the courtroom emptied. But for Breck's mother, Lauren Lafave, the nightmare wasn't over. It had only just begun. She had done everything right. She had reported Louis Daynes to the authorities. She had tried to block his access. She had warned the police that her son was being groomed, but no one took her seriously. And now, her son was gone. Lauren later said, "I had to identify my son's body. That moment will never leave me. He had trusted someone, and that trust was used to destroy him." But here's what makes Lauren remarkable. She didn't let grief silence her. She didn't disappear into the background. Instead, she stood up and spoke out. She started sharing Breck's story in schools, on radio, in documentaries, anywhere that would listen, because she didn't just want justice, she wanted change. Soon after Breck's death, Lauren launched the Breck Foundation, a charity focused on keeping children safe online. The foundation's message is clear and powerful. Play virtual, live real. That means yes, kids can be online. Yes, gaming can be fun. But don't blur the lines between the real world and the digital one. The foundation educates parents, schools, and especially teenagers, not by scaring them, but by helping them recognize the signs of grooming. Because it doesn't always look like a creepy stranger. Sometimes it looks like a friend, a mentor, someone who seems to care. Lauren says, if it could happen to Breck, it could happen to anyone. And that's something we all need to hear. Have you ever thought about how much you actually know about who your kids are talking to online? Do you know their usernames, their private servers, their Discord chats? This isn't fear-mongering, it's reality. Let's talk about the hard part. Now the part that still haunts this case. Could Breck have been saved? The simple, painful answer is yes. Lauren contacted Surrey police 1 month before the murder. She told them her son was being manipulated by an older man online. She warned them Louis was dangerous. She begged for intervention. But her concerns were dismissed. No welfare check. No interview with Louis. No digital monitoring. Years later, an investigation found that Surrey police failed to act appropriately. They admitted mistakes. They issued apologies. But by then, it was too late. How many red flags does it take before someone listens? What would you do if your gut told you something was wrong, but no one believed you? This part of the story is heavy, but it's not the end. Next, we'll look at how gaming platforms have responded since and what still needs to change to prevent the next Breck. Breck met Lewis through online gaming, and that detail matters. Because for millions of teens, games aren't just games. They're communities, social spaces, entire worlds where friendships are built, and sometimes where danger hides. Louis Daynes didn't use a dark alley to find his victim. He used a headset and a server invite. He didn't need to leave his bedroom to groom Breck. All he needed was patience and access. Gaming platforms like Minecraft, TeamSpeak, and others can be great spaces for creativity and teamwork, but they also offer something predators love: private chats, unmoderated rooms, anonymity. In Breck's case, Lewis created a special group, a private server just for boys who loved coding and tech. It sounded harmless, educational even, but it was actually a way to isolate, to control the environment, to make sure there were no outside voices to interrupt his grooming. Think about that. If you're a parent, would you even know if your child was in one of these private circles? It's not about banning games, it's about understanding how they work and who else is playing. After Breck's story made headlines, the gaming industry was under pressure. Parents were asking, why isn't there more monitoring? Why can adults so easily connect with kids online? Where are the safeguards? But here's the tough truth. Most gaming platforms aren't designed to prevent grooming. Sure, they have terms of service, they have report buttons, they sometimes issue bans, but by the time a predator is reported, it's often too late. And many platforms, especially smaller, private ones, have no real moderation at all. In Lewis's case, he wasn't on a mainstream app with filters and oversight. He operated in quiet corners of the internet where no one was watching. Some companies have since added new safety features, keyword alerts, AI flagging, more human moderators, but it's not enough because predators evolve faster than the tools meant to stop them. Should the companies do more? Or is the responsibility also on us, the parents, the schools, the systems around these kids? It's a question that still doesn't have a full answer. Let's be honest, this story hurts because it wasn't random. It wasn't unavoidable. There were moments, clear, bright moments when someone could have stepped in. If the police had acted sooner, if Lewis had been flagged by the platforms, if more people had taken Lauren seriously, maybe Breck would still be here. And that's the most painful part of all the what ifs. But out of that pain has come a message that's helped thousands. You cannot protect your kids from everything, but you can talk to them and you can teach them to recognize danger even when it's dressed as a friend. Breck wasn't foolish. He wasn't reckless. He was a smart, thoughtful teenager who was targeted. And that means this could happen to anyone. Next up, we'll dig into what you can do whether you're a parent, a sibling, or just someone who wants to protect the vulnerable online. If there's one thing the Breck Bednar case proves, it's that education saves lives. Not just classroom lessons, but real, raw conversations about online safety, about predators, about manipulation. Because grooming doesn't start with a threat. It starts with flattery, with attention, with promises. Breck's story is now part of training programs for schools, police officers, and youth groups across the UK. The Breck Foundation travels to hundreds of schools every year, speaking directly to students not to scare them, but to wake them up. One of the key messages: if someone you meet online tells you to keep a secret from your family, that's a red flag. Simple, clear, and effective. The more we normalize talking about online danger, the less power predators have, because they rely on silence. Let's be real, parenting today is harder than ever. Kids are online by the age of 5. They learn to navigate phones and games faster than we ever did. And a lot of parents feel left behind. Lauren Lafave always says, don't just give your child a device, give them a roadmap. Talk to them about who they talk to. Ask them to show you the chats. Set boundaries, not because you don't trust them, but because you love them enough to get uncomfortable. And if something doesn't feel right, trust your gut. Because Lauren's gut told her something was off with Daynes. She knew it, and she was right. She just didn't get the support she needed in time. You might be wondering, have things gotten better since 2014? Yes and no. Some police forces have improved their training on grooming. Some schools now have digital safety as part of their curriculum. And some platforms are finally taking moderation seriously. But here's the harsh truth. Predators still find ways. They still lurk in voice chats. They still join private servers. They still pretend to be mentors, friends, or fellow gamers. The internet changes fast, and the law, it moves slow. Until legislation catches up and until tech companies are held truly accountable, kids like Breck will remain vulnerable. So what can we do? We talk. We stay curious. We stay present in their digital lives. Because silence helps no one. Breck Bednar should have been an engineer. He should have gone to university. He should be 24 years old right now, building things, changing the world. But instead, he became a story, a warning, a name attached to tragedy. But through his mother's strength, through the Breck Foundation, his story has also become a lifeline for other families. Thousands of parents have taken action because of Breck. Thousands of kids have reported suspicious behavior because of what they learned from his story. And if even one life is saved because of that, Breck's legacy is alive. I want you to think about something. When you hear about online predators, it's easy to imagine some stranger in a dark room typing in shadows. But often, it's someone who sounds like a friend, someone who's polite, charming, intelligent, like Daynes. That's why Breck's story isn't just sad, it's terrifying. Because it shows how quickly trust can be built and how quietly it can be weaponized. If you're a parent, check in with your kids. If you're a gamer, stay aware of who's in your circle. And if something doesn't feel right, say something. Because Breck couldn't, but you still can.